Good morning to all our CCOP members from across Canada. I'm Lauren Rendle, and I'm speaking to you from Calgary, where spring has finally arrived. I'm pleased to introduce my co-host for today's meeting, CCOP Vice President David Duncan. David, thanks for being here. Maybe you can tell our listeners where here is for you.
Thanks, Lauren. I'm calling in today from Hamilton, Ontario. Hello to everyone who's joining us.
I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of the many spaces from which we gather today. As pilgrims, we know that the paths we walk take us in the footsteps of many generations of pilgrims who went before us. In the same spirit, we acknowledge that wherever we are in this country, we gather in places where generations of Indigenous people have sought and continue to seek to walk gently on the land. We aspire to a new relationship with all our relations in all generations, one based in mutual hospitality and respect. And with that, welcome to the CCOP Annual General Meeting for the year ending December 31, 2023.
This is our fourth year using this platform. And to help make the experience as painless as possible, we're going to start by walking you through some of the things you see on your screen. First, the only people whose faces you will see are our speakers or panelists. Everyone else's microphones and cameras are off, but you'll be able to ask questions and of course be able to vote. More about that in a minute. However, if you hover your mouse along the bottom of your Zoom window on your screen, you should see some icons. One of those is something called Q&A, and this is the place where you can ask questions or make comments. Just click on Q&A and a window will pop up where you can type your question. Notice that there's a scroll bar on the right-hand side of the Q&A window.
We have an enthusiastic team of volunteers who are monitoring the Q&A, and there are lots of people on this call. So we'll ask that you keep your questions and comments relevant to the motion or topic that is on the floor. We also apologize in advance if we can't get to all the questions within the time constraints of the meeting. If we don't get to your question, we will contact you after the meeting with an answer. If your question has to do with how to use the meeting technology, you can contact our IT support at the email address that's up on the screen, and our video conferencing guru, Julie, will help you out.
As you saw on the meeting agenda, we do have some motions to be put before you at this meeting. And when we get to the motions, a window will pop up automatically on your screen, and you'll have about 20 seconds to cast a vote on each motion. Your votes are all anonymous, and what we're going to do now is put up a little test so that you can try it out. So this should look familiar. We're going to ask Tim Borum, our Chief Returning Officer, to launch the poll. When it appears on your screen, you'll see that there are in fact 2 questions for you to answer. Please respond. Whoops, I'm going to move my questions over. Please respond to both of them. And for this one, we'll give you a little extra time because it's our trial run. And when you're done, click on Submit. Remember, there's a scroll bar to the right of the questions, and you may need to scroll down to answer the second question and to find the Submit bar.
Madam Chair, the poll is now closed. For the first question, top 2 answers were Camino Francés and Camino Português. As you can see on the screen, 45 out of 61 people chose the Camino Francés or have been on the Camino Francés, and 36 out of 61 on the Camino Português. For the second question, which is your favorite Camino, we had 33% chose the Camino Francés and 18% chose the Camino Português.
Thank you, Tim. David, maybe this would be a good time to explain to our members how we handle abstentions.
Sure. So if on any motion you check the box that says abstain, then your vote won't count in determining whether or not that motion passes. Only votes cast in favor or in opposition are counted when we determine whether there is a majority or not.
I think that takes us through most of the housekeeping items relating to use of video conferencing features. Just a few more points about the program for today. We plan the business portion of the AGM to run for less than an hour. Following that, we'll have a brief 5-minute bio break, and then we'll be joined by our special guest, Dave Whitson, who joins us from Portland, Oregon today. Dave's talk is titled Walking the Camino in Comunitas. Having heard Dave speak earlier this year, we are sure to be intrigued and inspired by his stories. So do hope you will be able to stay.
And we're recording this meeting for members who are unable to attend, and we will make Dave's talk available on our YouTube channel after today's events.
And with that, let's get started. The first order of business is to confirm that we have quorum, and I see that we do have quorum with over 60 CCOP members in attendance, and so I will call us to order. Members, you have a slide of the agenda before you. The motion to adopt the agenda is moved by Donna Coots of Vancouver and seconded by Chuck Hunt of Edmonton. Before I call the question, we need to know whether any of our members have anything to add to the agenda or any requests for reordering.
If you do, then you should type a question mark into the Q&A box. Remember, the Q&A box is at the bottom of the Zoom window. After you type the question mark, hit send, and that will tell us that we need to give you a little bit more time to type your full question before we continue. So after you type a question mark and hit send, type your actual question and hit send again. We'll pause for about 20 seconds in case there are requests for changes to the agenda.
Wendy, are there any requests for change?
No questions have been received, Lauren.
Thank you, Wendy. The motion is to adopt the agenda as circulated. You will have about 20 seconds to vote. So, Tim, would you launch the poll, please?
Madam Chair, poll has now closed. For the motion to adopt the agenda, there are 71 votes in approval and 0 opposing.
Thank you, Tim. I declare the motion carried.
We'll now move on to the motion to adopt the minutes of last year's meeting, which is moved by Kevin McKinney of Fredericton and seconded by Mary Virtue of Victoria. Before I call the question, are there any errors or omissions in the minutes? If so, please let us know you have a question by submitting a question mark, and then type your correction for the minutes into the Q&A and hit submit.
Wendy, are there any questions?
No questions have been received.
Thank you, Wendy. The motion to adopt the minutes of the meeting of February 25th, 2023 as circulated, you will have 20 seconds to vote. Thank you. Well, Tim, will you launch the poll, please?
Madam Chair, the poll has now ended. For the motion to adopt the minutes, 68, we have 68 votes to approve and no votes to oppose.
Thank you, Tim. I declare the motion is carried. There's a full president's report on the CCOP website, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll just talk about a few highlights. It takes a lot of enthusiasm and commitment to create a successful volunteer-run organization, and the Canadian Company of Pilgrims has such a team and board directors and chapter coordinators who create, through their energy, enthusiasm, and commitment, opportunities for us all to share our communal stories and experiences that may inspire others on their way. In April 2023, the board and chapter coordinators met in person for the first time since 2018 to reignite the flame. Out of this time together came our first thoughts on our ethical guidelines, which in a few months have been developed into the Mindful Pilgrim Initiative, which now includes a credential-sized Mindful Pilgrim card and tools for chapters to use to encourage discussion of what it means to walk as a pilgrim. A Mindful Pilgrim card is now included in each credential ordered online, and we are very appreciative of the generous donation to print the Mindful Pilgrim cards that we received from the Spanish ambassador, our honorary patron. The 2025 International Gathering of Pilgrims was announced at last year's AGM. A year later, this joint gathering of the Canadian Company of Pilgrims and the American Pilgrims on the Camino, to be held on Vancouver's beautiful UBC campus, gets more exciting with each month as development work is completed. An official announcement and timeline for registration will be coming out soon. Although it's occurred this year, I do want to draw attention to an amazing event that honors two of our past presidents, Wendy Lawley and Lee Tenning. In March, Wendy and Lee were invited to attend a special ceremony held at the Ottawa residence of the Spanish ambassador. The ceremony was to honor the work Wendy and Lee have done for the Camino and for Spain. The Spanish ambassador, representing the King of Spain, bestowed the Officer's Cross of the Order of the Civil Merit on both Wendy and Lee. The May issue of our Pilgrim's Footprint will have some photos. Now, Dave will present some highlights from Tom Frieson's chapter liaison report, as Tom was not able to join us today. David.
Thank you, Lauren. So on behalf of Tom, each of our 18 chapters has a unique character, and they all offer valuable activities and supports for chapter members. This diversity of programs is shared between chapter coordinators who meet monthly on Zoom to learn from each other. Many chapters have developed leadership teams to plan and organize activities. 2023 saw a resurgence of walking and Camino 101 programs as members headed back to the Camino. Many chapter coordinators have a background in serving as hospitaleros and have a strong understanding of the value of giving back. So chapters often offer annual or biannual hospitalero training as well. Soon, Tom will be stepping back from his role as the chapter liaison, a position which he's held for the last 2 years, and he's going to devote more of his time to this important hospitalero training program. He developed it and has led this program for years. The board so appreciates the knowledge and the experience Tom brought to the chapter liaison role and the relationships he has that he's developed with and between the chapter coordinators. So thank you, Tom. You'll be missed in this role, but we're really happy that Tom will continue not only as a London chapter coordinator, but also as a CCOP board director.
Thank you, David. The motion to receive the reports of the president and chapter liaison is moved by Nadia Marshy of Ottawa and seconded by David Talon of Toronto. Before I call the question, Are there any questions about these reports? Just type in your question mark and you know what to do next.
No questions have been received, Lauren.
Thank you, Wendy. Tim, please launch the poll. The motion is to receive the reports of the president and chapter liaison as circulated. You'll have 20 seconds to vote.
Madam Chair, the poll has now ended. For the motion to accept the reports of the President and Chapter Liaison, there are 67 votes to approve and 0 to oppose.
Thank you, Tim. I declare the motion carried.
We're now going to invite Barb Smith, our treasurer, to present the financial reports for 2023. Barb.
Thanks, David. What I'm presenting to you today is a brief overview of our financial statements for the year ending December 31st, 2023. A complete set of these financial statements is provided on our website for your review. If you've already looked at the documents on our website, you'll have seen the Treasurer's report referring to this year's finances and another report called Public Accountant Report 2023, which is the formal financial statements that were prepared by Buchberger, Berg and Partners. In the past, you would not have seen the public accountant statements, as last year was the first year we went through the review process and had to incur the associated costs. I'm happy to report that the review engagement did not result in any significant changes, and the reviewer's conclusion was that the financial statements were fairly presented. I will provide more details in my report as we go through the numbers. After the review process, the financial statements were presented, reviewed, and approved by the Board of Directors at our meeting on March 28, 2024. Just so you understand the workings of how finances are managed by our organization, it is the board's responsibility to review and approve the financial statements, the budget, and any other financial arrangements. Financial statements are presented quarterly to the board, in addition to other financial information and forecasts that might affect decision-making and strategic planning. Supporting the board on all financial matters are 3 segregated committees. Overseeing all finance-related transactions and finance proposals is the Finance Committee, which is comprised of 4 members, myself, the treasurer, and 3 others, of which 3 of us are all retired CPAs. In addition, we have a subcommittee called the Investment Committee, which manages our lifetime funds, and another subcommittee called the Donation Committee, which manages the donation program fund and distributions to support albergues and other enterprises on the Camino. All these committees do put in a significant amount of time and effort to ensure that our finances are properly vetted and that the funds are used to support our members, the chapters, and community-related enterprises that allow us to continue to enjoy pilgrimages to Santiago. So thank you to those members that serve on these committees. The first slide summarizes the revenues for 2023 compared to 2022. For each of the operating, lifetime, and donation programs. CCOP had a very good year with significant upward trend on membership, credential, and badge sales compared to the previous year. This shows how pilgrims have really started to travel again. In fact, this upward trend has continued in 2024, and our revenues have now exceeded the threshold where we have to register again for GST and HST and start remitting beginning this month. Other income includes funds received from our affiliated partners, Johnson Insurance and Trip Merchant, of which all have been allocated to the benefit of our donation program. The last line shows our investment and interest income representing dividends earned in the Lifetime Investment Fund, yielding about 8% over the year. And in the operating fund is the interest earned on our GICs. Under the column for the donation program, you will see that we received $4,290 in donations during the year that have been credited to the Camino Spirit Fund and the Honoring John Brierley Fund. This slide shows the various expenses we incurred during the year. The first line, Camino support, represents contributions we made to mainly albergues in Spain through our donation program. If you would like to see the exact albergues and enterprises that receive these funds, that is detailed in my treasurer's report on the website. But a few examples are a printer and cartridges for the Pilgrim House, upgrades to lighting and power for an albergue in Burgos, and operational costs for a few albergues that were having problems making ends meet. CCOP gathering refers to funds that have been set aside in the amount of $7,500 for our next chapter and board gathering to be held in May of 2025. The board hopes to hold these biannual gatherings, bringing our leaders together face to face to help move our strategic plan forward. Chapter support is for funds provided to our chapters to help them hold special events for our members. Insurance is lower than the previous year, as this year there was an adjustment to reduce the expense and classify it as prepaid expense made by the public accountant during the review process in the amount of $413. I will talk more about that adjustment later. Interest and bank charges are mainly payment fees we pay to third party for our online sales. The expense is up from last year because the sales were up. Office includes postage and supplies for mailing out credentials and badges, which are up due to the increased sales of these items. It also includes a cost for our new Mindful Pilgrim cards that we are now mailing out with the credentials from our order desk. Professional fees, you will see a big jump from last year, from $666 to $5,222 this year. Last year, we only had to incur the cost to file our tax return. This year, we had budgeted $3,700 for the cost to review engagement and file our taxes. However, at year end, we had already incurred the $722 to file the 2022 tax return and accrued an additional $4,500 for the review engagement for a total cost of $5,222. After the review process, the actual fee we got, the invoice we got from the professional accountant for 2023 review engagement was actually $5,900, with a difference that will be recognized in 2024. But I just want to note that the $5,222 recognized in 2023 is about 14% of our operating expenses for 2023, which is significant. If you compare this with the previous year, special fees were at $666, were only 2%. This is the first year we have done a review engagement and was the result of a few votes not to waive the appointment of a public accountant, and the resulting review engagement adjustments to our statements were minor. Supplies account for the cost of badges ordered in 2023 and a small cost for the AGM. Past few years, we have not spent any funds on travel, as no one was traveling with COVID. However, in 2023, the board approved travel for CCOP to be represented at various conferences. In summary, member representatives from our organization attended the World Meeting of Camino Associations in October of 2023, the American Pilgrims on the Camino Conference, and the L'Association de Québec Grand Assemblement in Quebec. As a national organization in the international community of Camino associations, it is to our members' benefit that we engage with Spanish and other Camino associations. This engagement ensures that we have a voice in the well-being and sustainability of the Camino, and that doors continue to be open for our members to travel on a Camino. International engagement, which at sometimes results in the need to travel, is part of the Camino experience of learning, sharing, and assisting others along the way. If you'd like to review in detail which amounts were spent for each trip and who represented our organization, that is provided in the details of my treasurer's report on the website. Website and database expenses cover the cost of MailChimp and Membership Works and the website, and just a small increase from the previous year. Financial summary puts together the revenues and expenses and adds in the unrealized capital gains and losses and the intrafund transfers for the year. Below the line net before capital gains and losses, you will see an amount of unrealized capital gains and losses. In 2023, we recognized an unrealized capital loss of $1,982 to recognize the current value of those investments at December 31st, 2023. These values do go up and down, but be assured that we still continue to earn steady monthly dividends on these investments throughout the year. Annually, we do adjust the value, excuse me, of these investments. So if the market goes up next year, these values will be adjusted accordingly. Below this, you will see a net before interfund transfers. And under this line, we recognize funds that we have transferred. Annually, we transfer excess funds from our operations to our donation program, and we also transfer a specified amount from the lifetime fund to the operating fund to support the overall operating costs for our membership. This is based on a formula where we use the lifetime membership paid by a member and allocate it over the member's lifetime, with CCOP estimated about 25 years. In conclusion, we had a net surplus of $2,916 in the operating fund and $6,834 in lifetime, and a deficit of $1,633 in the donation program, which is a result of us distributing more funds from that program than we actually received in the year. We were able to do this because we had surplus funds built up from the previous year in the donation program. So we're in a position to distribute more in 2023. That leads us to the statement of financial position, which shows us a snapshot of the assets and liabilities at December 31st, 2023. The new format created by the public accountant breaks down our assets and liabilities by fund type, operating, lifetime, or donation program, which we are now using as our new format for this statement. Cash represents the balances in bank accounts like our checking and savings, and our Stripe account, which is our credit card payments, and cash accumulated in our BMO investment account. Prepaid expenses account for the portion of our insurance policy that pertains to 2024. So we showed 4 months of prepaid insurance. Short-term investments represents our BMO investment account, less the cash balance. Funds are invested in large cap diversified exchange traded funds, referred to as ETFs, paying monthly dividends, which this year yielded 8%. It is intended that these ETFs will preserve our capital and give us a reasonable, steady return. Our lifetime membership fund is a key part of our financial plan, designed to last a Pilgrim's lifetime of approximately 25 years. These funds are managed by the investment committee in consultation with our financial advisor from BMO. Interfund receivable for the lifetime and donation program funds are offset by the interfund payable that you see showing under the operating fund column. Accruals and payables account for $291 owing on our CCOP visa, $16,859, which has been accrued for our future board and chapter coordinator gathering in May 2025, and a small CIBC adjustment of -$74, and an accrual for our review engagement of $4,500. As I stated earlier, I was going to detail for you what exact changes were made during the review process with the public accountant Buchberger, Berg & Partners. So 3 adjustments were made, due largely to the full adoption of accrual basis of accounting. The combined effect of these adjustments was an increase in our net surplus of $874. These adjustments are common types of entries, but we had not incorporated them in our statements in the past. The adjustments were, number 1, prepaid insurance, which was set up in the amount of $430 to account for 4 months of our policy that was for 2024. Interest income of $470 was added for the accrual of relating to our GSEs that we hold, further increasing our surplus, and then a small adjustment of $9 to the BMO investment account. We thought it might be interesting for you to present to you the trend over the past 5 years for our membership sales. As you'll see, in 2019, we had a pretty good year. As we entered into 2020 and 2021, travel got curtailed, and you can see our membership level did decline. In 2022, we started to see Pilgrims returning to the Camino, and our membership grew from 2,145 members at the end of 2021 to 2,805 at the end of 2022, which is a significant increase. In 2023, our membership sales were the best we have ever had, reaching all-time highs for our organization. Our membership grew from 2,805 from the previous year to 3,679 members, about a 30% increase. And that concludes my financial report.
We have a question, Barb.
Okay.
It says, can you please explain the non-wavering of the public accountant that you mentioned? What does this mean and what is the significance?
Okay, so we will go through this in detail shortly, but the quick answer to that is we are obligated as a nonprofit organization to present to our membership whether we want to waiver our review engagement. If our membership agrees, and it has to be unanimous, to waive the review engagement, then we do not need to incur the cost. But we need unanimous agreement on that. And it's an obligation that's forced upon us. We don't have a choice.
Wendy, are there any other questions?
A question about, could you please provide a bit more detail about office expenses?
Office expenses are, under office expenses, mainly the postage and cost to send out our credentials and badges. That's the majority of our office expenses. We have very little expenses for supplies, and we do not have computers or anything. That's all done by the volunteers. So.
There don't appear to be any more questions, Lauren.
Thank you, Wendy. Then Tim, please launch the poll. And the motion is to receive the report of the treasurer as presented. And again, you'll have 20 seconds to vote.
Madam Chair, for the motion to receive the report of the treasurer, there were 74 votes to approve and no votes in opposition.
Thank you, Tim. I declare the motion carried. That concludes the reports from the officers. We do, though, welcome your questions and feedback anytime throughout the year. To contact any of the officers, just go to the contact link on our website, and we look forward to hearing from you.
The next motion is one that we are required to put to our members every year under the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act. That's what Barb was just referring to. If the members are satisfied with the integrity of the financial statements, the Act allows them to waive the appointment of a public accountant. This waiver has to be approved unanimously by those who choose to vote, which means that there cannot be any votes against the motion or it fails. And just as a reminder of what Barb was talking about, our financial statements are prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and they are reviewed by the Finance Committee, which is comprised of the treasurer and a former vice president, both of which are retired chartered professional accountants. There's also a board member who is a retired certified management consultant, and another member who is also a retired chartered professional accountant. Our financial statements and supporting documentation are reviewed every month by the officers, and the financial statements are presented and approved by the Board of Directors quarterly, including the year-end financial statements. Given the rigor applied to monitoring and publicly reporting our financials throughout the year, it wasn't surprising that our first public accountant review did not uncover any material changes. And with the $5,900 spent this past year on accounting fees, the hope is that all members will now have the peace of mind that their membership dollars, the proceeds of sales, and their donations are well managed. The engagement of a public accountant would represent another significant expense of about $4,500 this year, or about 12% of our expenses in the coming budget. If you recall, the revenue summary presented earlier, that is roughly equivalent to taking all of the donation money or all of the badge sales money and applying it to accounting services. So the board believes that the money would be better spent on operations versus administration, and that is on repairs to albergues, supporting chapter work, and working internationally with our other Camino associations. So therefore, the board has unanimously recommended that we seek agreement from you, our members, to waive the appointing of a public accountant this year. We want to be very sure that we explain carefully what it is that you're voting for and what the implications are. So without the motion, the act requires us to hire an accountant. If all of you who vote support the motion, then we will not hire an external public accountant for approximately $4,500. Even if one person opposes the motion, that means we will be required to appoint a public accountant and incur that cost.
Thank you, David. The motion to waive the appointment of a public accountant is moved by Neville Tensor of Victoria and seconded by Raymond Jeunesse of Winnipeg. Before I call the question, do you have any more questions about this motion? Wendy, are there any questions?
No, only a comment that all the people doing the accounting are former accountants. Not a question.
Okay, great, good comment. Thank you, Wendy. Tim, then please launch the poll. And the motion is to waive the appointment of a public accountant.
Madam Chair, the poll has now ended. On the motion to waive the appointment of a public accountant, we have 75 votes to approve and 0 to oppose.
Thank you, Tim. With these votes, the motion is unanimously carried.
And now I'd like to introduce, sorry for the delay there, and now I'd like to introduce Lee Penick, our past president and chair of the Nominations Committee, and ask her to present the report of the Nominations Committee. Lee, over to you.
Sorry, everyone. I'd hidden my stop video things, so I think
Okay,
I'm okay.
over to you.
Thanks, David. There were 3 members on this year's nominations committee: Wendy Lowley, Betty Brown, and myself. Our committee has terms of reference that guide our process, starting with identifying how many vacancies will be coming up and what are the qualities and experience that we're going to need on the board in the coming years. Our mandate is to have a board of directors that is geographically diverse and consists of people who share our love of the Camino and who want to be part of a vibrant and inclusive community. We were looking for individuals who have experience as pilgrims on the Camino, and also who've been involved in local chapter activities or who've served as hospitaleros. Our process is summarized on the slide, and you can read about it more fully in our written report. The process this year was essentially the same as in other years. Just to tell you a little bit about the board and the vacancies that we needed to fill this year. The board includes 13 directors. One of our directors will have completed two 3-year terms, so is therefore not eligible to run again. One other director decided not to complete a second term. And 3 directors have served a first 3-year term, and 2 of them let the committee know that they would like to run for a second term. So that left us with 5 vacancies to fill, including the 2 renewals. I'm very pleased to report that Dory Antolin and David Ramsey have both agreed to let their names stand for a second 3-year term on the board. You have their statements in your meeting packages, and I'm not going to read them out to you, but I would like to acknowledge just what an amazing contribution both Dory and David have already made to the board, and how pleased we are that they want to come back. Dory's from Toronto. She's a lifetime member and an active member of the Toronto chapter. She grew up speaking Spanish and spending summers in Spain, where both of her parents grew up. She's now been on the board for 3 years, and she has really enriched the board with her understanding of Spanish language and culture, not to mention French as well, and with her connections in Spain. She's also ready with her time and energy whenever the board's looking for a volunteer to do something, and she's served on both our IT committee and our International Engagement Committee, as well as serving as a volunteer to train new hospitaleros. Like many of our board members, Dory has walked a lot of Caminos and is looking forward to being back on the trail. David Ramsey is a retired journalist and communications professional. He lives in rural Nova Scotia and has also lived and worked in 3 other provinces. Since joining the board, he has assumed the leadership of the Halifax chapter. He was our secretary, and so as secretary, part of the officers group, and has served on both the tech committee and the communications committee. Then just this year, he stepped aside from the role of secretary in order to assume the reins as the new editor of Pilgrim Footprints, and has put together a team to help him do that. David is a quiet, steady presence on our board, and we've all come to know and appreciate his diligence, his creativity, and his sense of humor. These 2 board members really embody the service ethic and the vision of CCOP. They're both passionate about the Camino and both willing to roll up their sleeves and put their talents to the service of our organization. I can't tell you how pleased we are that they want to continue in those roles. I also want to introduce to you the 3 individuals who put their names forward as candidates as first-time board members. You have their biographical and pilgrim statements in your package. So again, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I do want to introduce you to them briefly so that you know what outstanding candidates they are. Judy Colombi brings a wealth of experience both on and off the trail. She lived in Ottawa and she lives in Ottawa, and she has worked in senior management roles and brings expertise in strategic planning, in policy and program development, and in leading teams. Now retired, she continues to work as a freelance health safety consultant, but always leaves herself lots of time to go and walk another Camino. She's recently completed her first stint as an hospitalera, and she has also served at the Pilgrim office in Santiago. Dennis Garnham's name might be familiar to many of you. If you had a chance to hear Dennis speak last year on his cross-country book tour, you'll know that this is somebody who brings a huge amount of energy, creativity, and passion to our board, or who will. Dennis's autobiographical book is called Toward Beauty, Reigniting a Creative Life on the Camino de Santiago, and it stands out among Camino books for its mixture of humor, pathos, and fearless honesty. Dennis is a writer, a theater director, and an artistic director. He recently moved to Toronto from London, Ontario. He's a high-energy, big-picture thinker, and we're looking forward to his participation on our board. Julie Rosenthal will also be well known to many of our members. Julie has been active for many years with the Victoria chapter, and until just a few years ago, she also served at the national level as our database administrator and virtual assistant. She was part of the team that selected and implemented several of our organization's information systems. And although new to our board, Julie comes to us with a deep knowledge of the organization's behind the scenes workings and with plenty of experience on other not-for-profit boards, as well as a passion for the Camino that includes service as an hospitalera. All three of these candidates are experienced pilgrims and CCOP members who are passionate about the Camino and eager to contribute their time and their talents. We're all looking forward to what they will bring to our board meetings and to our organization. So the nominations committee unanimously recommended to the board that the names of all 5 nominees be approved for membership on the CCOP board of directors, and the board has approved this recommendation. According to our bylaws, if the number of candidates is equal to or less than the number of vacancies on the board, the president may declare the candidates to be acclaimed. So that completes my report on nominations, and I'm pleased to present to you the 2024 Board of Directors for the Canadian Company of Pilgrims, the list you see before you, and especially to welcome our new directors. According to our bylaws, the board appoints its own officers every year. And in previous years, it's been our practice that the board meets after the AGM to name the officers in the coming year. But with our AGM coming later in the year and with the nominations happening by acclamation, the board decided in January that it would name its 2024 officers. And we thought you would be interested to know who you are. So in key roles, we have Lauren Rendle continuing as president, David Duncan stepping into the role of vice president, Barb Smith continuing as treasurer, Julie Rosenthal coming in and bless her heart as a new board member, but also as secretary, and Tom Friesen, who's continuing as board and chapter liaison, but who, as you heard, will be stepping away soon, and we will be reporting to our members through Pilgrim Footprints on our new board chapter liaison when that appointment is made. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Lee. Before we move to questions, I would just like to say a big thank you to Jim Rondeau, Ali Witzke, and Len Polsky, our outgoing board members. Jim created our member benefits program, and although completing his 2nd term on the board, he will remain on as chair of the member benefits committee to train his replacement. Ellie has served as chapter liaison officer and in 2022, our president, and is looking forward to continuing to attend chapter meetings in both Kitchener-Waterloo and Toronto. Len has been our vice president for the past 3 years. His legal background has been immensely helpful as we amended some of our bylaws and searched for the right insurance. Although Len has had to leave his director's position early, he remains available for consultation. Much thanks to all of 3 of you for your ongoing commitment to the Canadian Company of Pilgrims. We also at this time bid farewell and a huge thank you to Charles Moody, Lisa Manel, and Julie Burke, our national newsletter editorial team for the past 4 years. Together, they created a Pilgrim's Footprint format that keeps us informed, engaged, and feeling connected, which is so valuable when there is such distance between all of us.
Are there any questions from the membership about the nominations committee's report?
No questions have been received.
Thanks, Wendy.
Following up on what Lee has said in her report, since the number of candidates matches exactly the number of open positions on the board, as president, I declare these candidates have been elected by acclamation. It is a great pleasure that we, the the board welcome these. So we're looking very much forward to working together this upcoming year. And that concludes the formal portion of our agenda. Since no other business was identified when we approved the agenda, and so the agenda has been completed. And I declare the annual general meeting to be adjourned. But don't go away. We will have a 5-minute bio break, and then I invite you to come back and get comfortable and enjoy our upcoming presentation by Dave Whitson. At this time, I will invite all the panelists to turn their microphones and cameras off. We'll see you in 5 minutes. Look forward to it.